So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and we're back on the Greenwood here with Thranduil's Halls, and this is a map which has never let me down in the past, so here's hoping that it continues not to do so. And this is going to be a somewhat themed battle. I mean, not entirely. There's a full mixture really of good and evil forces on the attack, orcs, men and elves. But on the defence we do have somewhat more of a lore-friendly force comprised of two Dunland armies held together in the middle by one force from Isengard. So it'll be quite interesting to see actually how these defensive armies hold up, because obviously Dunland don't have the most quality in their army at all. Even Isengard, to be honest with you, while they do have some quality options, they're certainly not going to be on the level of someone like the elves, who can just really stock up on quality when they're on the defence in such a way. But it'll be interesting to see. So I would definitely in this situation put a heavy advantage in favour of the attackers, but on this map you can certainly make it work for you with artillery and good lines of fire for some devastating skirmishes. But we'll go through the attacking armies first of all. We'll start off with the realm of Lothlorien, played by Froggy. So Lothlorien, of course, very, very strong archers. Maybe not most at home in this situation, because units like the March Wardens of the Wood here, while they're obviously very damaging, have those poison arrows, are not the most heavily armoured, and in a situation like this you are going to have to put yourself in harm's way in order to get into a firing position. But even so, based on the fact that the attackers have the advantage in terms of numbers, they should be able to lay down some sort of damage at the very least. They also, of course, have very nice infantry, very nasty infantry, and this is a good combination of the melee defense of elves and decent armour as well. Their armour isn't as high as in Imladris, but they do somewhat make up for that by having, in general, more aggressive focuses to their army with slightly higher attack values, and the Lorinand Axemen are a good example of that. Using axes means they do compromise a little bit on melee defense in comparison to other elven units of this type, but they do have a little bit more damage as well, which could be very useful against some of the lower tier units they're facing. Also have some heavy elven spearmen in the Lorinand spears, so obviously very good for shield wall, even in spite of their low numbers. Good defensive values as well, good to have in the middle of all of the rest of your units. Lorinand sword masters are going to be another one of those high attack units that are going to be very useful for ploughing through a lot of the lower tier defenders, but of course the lack of a shield does make them a little bit more vulnerable to missile fire. Lorinand archers, heavy elven archers, know what to expect from them. Very good at range, and then also very good in melee as well, albeit with a little bit less utility than some of the other archers that Lothlorien have, for example. Even the lower end archers have poison arrows, and the slightly higher tier ones have also got special projectiles. The Lorinand archers are kind of the gooseberries in that sense, in that they don't have any special properties to their arrows. Elder Council, spears, and javelin hybrids, obviously very good unit for zoning out cavalry. Maybe not going to be the most important thing on this map, but still, the javelins are always going to be useful. And then back here, we have both of the really high tier units, that archers I should say, that Lothlorien have available. Watchers of the Goldenwood with their high mass Silverthorn arrows, and my personal favourites, the Kindred of Celeborn with their split shot. Then, the second army is the other Sylvan Elf faction, Inarius, going to be playing as Mirkwood. Mirkwood really having their thunder stolen in terms of archers by Lothlorien in 0.97, but they did gain units like the Ents in order to somewhat make up for that. And Mirkwood, it's not as if their skirmish line is bad, they just don't have some of the special projectiles that Lothlorien do. Hiri Peng, for example, the heavy archer of Mirkwood, without the armour upgrade here, but still very good at range, and then also very good in melee. They've actually spread their army out quite a lot. Elder Council, same unit as Lothlorien, exactly the same in every way. Hiriek, the heavy spears of Mirkwood. Again, Mirkwood, just when you compare them to Lothlorien, slightly higher melee defense, slightly lower armor values, especially without the armor upgrade. But honestly, in many ways, that could be construed to be a little bit better for Mirkwood in certain situations. Though in this situation, I think, considering they're on the attack, maybe slightly higher armor values would have been preferable. Spears of Emenduir, the entry-level spears for Mirkwood, very low armor values, but still very good in melee nonetheless. Hiriauth, the line infantry. More Hiriak back here. Hiriauth once again, and I think we're going to get into some of the higher tier units, including the Elven King's Palace Guard back here. Obviously, I've said before how devastating they are, how versatile they are as well, and of course the mighty Ents also. Then, moving on, we have Dolorelf, who's going to be playing as Gondol, so a little bit more in terms of numbers, much more in terms of armour than the two factions we've already seen. Gondor Spearmen with both levels of armour upgrade. We have some Gondor Militia Archers who are going to be really good for the initial skirmish. They've got numbers, they've also got decent armour, and, well, for what they are, they have decent armour and a bit of a shield value, which can make them very efficient as long as they're not up against overwhelming force. We also have the Trebuchet, who they do look like spearmen. I'm not sure whether this is like the Silmarillion mechanic, where the artillery crew is actually genuine infantry here, or whether it's just a spearman model, because that would be a huge leg up for Gondor in certain cases, because it means that they could defend themselves somewhat from cavalry charges. Some Nimlothian Honour Guard and Vanguard of King Elisar over here. It's kind of interesting that he set up almost a defensive box-like formation considering they're on the attack, but no matter. Some civilians back here, as well as some Gondor militia infantry, so a bit of fodder as far as Gondor goes. Fully upgraded Gondor infantry going to be important here. The numbers are going to be necessary to engage with the defenders. Fully upgraded Gondor spearmen, and then at the back, the mighty Fountain Guard, of course. As far as phalanx units go, they're one of the scariest in the game. Excuse me. Then, the player who sent me the battle replay. This replay was sent to me quite a long time ago, but I've held off on doing it for now, because I've shown Thranduil's Hall so much in the past that I really wanted to put some distance between this and the last time I showed it. It is Eclipse 2500 of the Dark Cloud, and he's going to be playing as Arthedain, so Evendim Archers, very similar thing here to with the Gondor Militia Archers. Not the best armour, but they do have a little bit of a shield value and quite efficient for what you pay for them. Grey Company, charging forward, mounted Rangers, of course, Rangers, body piercing, very dangerous. Knights of Illuminus, if they can get in behind the line, they could be really devastating, but to be honest with you, Isengard and even Dunland are factions which should be able to zone out cavalry very easily, especially considering the choke points they have at their disposal. Some dismounted Knights of Illuminus in there. We have some Arthedain marksmen with the armour upgrade, so Arthedain, of course, a faction which can lean quite heavily into their archers. They've got a good variety. Evendim Spearmen, a very efficient unit of spears, again, rocking those shorts. A little bit further back through the trees. We hardly ever see this far back into the map. There's nothing really here, but still. Dunedain Peacekeepers, very good unit of line infantry with those axes, very dangerous, again, damaging, which should be useful against a lot of the lower tier units, because you don't necessarily need huge melee defense values against factions which don't necessarily have the most quality, like Dunland. So I think the Dunedain Peacekeepers should be really good here, as long as they're not focused down by crossbows. Illuminus Gate Guards as well, obviously really strong pikes. Lots of Arthedain pikemen without the armour upgrade, so they'll be very vulnerable to arrows. Some Dunedain Troll Slayers and some Wardens of the North back here. So pretty much what you'd expect from Arthedain, a efficient front line of lower tier spears and pikes with some quality interspersed with the Dunedain units and the Illuminus Gate Guards. And then obviously a lot of varied cavalry and ranged units as well. Very much the jacks of all trades of all of the good factions are Arthedain. And then the one evil faction on the attack, sort of breaking the parity a little bit, is going to be Joxim playing as Angmar. Angmar, for me, are a lot, well, I mean, they are very simple to play as Angmar, and they are strong at what they do as well. Obviously, a lot of brute force, and that's going to be very helpful on the attack here, because they'll be able to certainly add some numbers and a bit of steel to that attack alongside the Gondorians. Gundabad Guard here, which I believe buff the morale of nearby units. They don't look like much, but honestly, they're pretty decent as far as spears go. Just as the Guardians of Khan Doom in behind them again. As far as line infantry goes, they are very good, especially for orcs. They don't have the best attacking values, but they're certainly very tough to kill with that nice rusted plate armour and those big shields, which is all you really need from a unit like this. Angmar do their damage elsewhere. Some Blackwatch Legion for pushing through the line, so the defender's going to have to be on the lookout for that. We also have some Witch Realm Pikemen. We have some Witch Realm Hammer Guard with their rusted hammers. Everyone's favourite are here. This is what I'm always on the lookout for when Angmar are playing. The Witchers, so certainly the defenders are going to have to try and spray them down with crossbows with all due haste. Trolls of Gundabad, Witch Realm Pikemen, Gundabad Guard, some Trolls of Angmar over here as well as some Guardians of Khan Doom. There's probably some hidden Snaga in and amongst the trees as well. But now, let's move on to the defenders, starting off with the Dunland army that's over on this side at the hands of Master Blaster. So he's got some Half-Orc Spearguard and some Dunman Pikemen. So Dunland, of course, have a couple of units that are unique to them, but mostly they are a mix of Rudauer and Isengard's lower-end units. We have some Dunlanding veterans over here as their line infantry, of course, wielding those axes, but the problem they're going to face is a lot of those elven units. Obviously, no, the melee defense is going to be too much for them. Greenway Guards are going to be incredibly important in this battle. Crossbows are the one thing that Dunland do have at their disposal, alongside Isengard, of course. Greenway Sentries, Dunland Berserkers. Getting a little bit further back, we have some Half-Orc Bane Guard as well for that AP in melee. How useful that's going to be, I'm not so sure, and that's pretty much it. I mean, Dunland, considering the fact they do pull quite heavily from Rudauer, they're going to have some units that can hide as well, so we'll probably see them later on. The central of the two armies, which absolutely vital, that Pharaoh here. I'm just going to call him Pharaoh. That is Pharaoh, isn't it? Am I just retarded? I don't know. Anyway, Isengard is going to be absolutely vital if the defenders are going to win here, because Dunland just don't have the quality to do so on their own. Their numbers could be useful, but they're going to need Isengard to do a lot of the heavy lifting against some of the scarier units. The Lurtz Hunting Pack with their body piercing could be one such unit. Rangers, when you're on the defence, can be so devastating after all. We have some Uruk-hai pikemen, which again, for holding the line, going to be absolutely vital alongside the lower tier pikes that Dunland can bring. Uruk-hai berserkers, that AP, going to be useful against the Gondorians and Angmar in particular. Nazkai as well. Lots of pikes, which should be useful, honestly, against the elves also, considering Lothlorien have not brought their Karas-Galadhon's Guardians. Uruk-hai infantry in force, again, going to need to do a good job. Trolls of the White Hand, some Uruk-hai crossbowmen, and of course the Isengard Ballista, which already getting into a good position. We'll see if it can do some damage. And then finally, we have Sharkan playing as the other Dunland army. He's got a unit of Greenway Guards back in Thranduil's halls itself, but I think that was just a mistake not moving them. Dunman Scouts, we have some upgraded Half-Orc Bane Guard. I kind of like the fact that they use sort of like a mishmash of Uruk-hai armor when you upgrade their armor. It looks kind of neat. Over here, Half-Orc Spear Guard, some upgraded Dunman Berserkers. Half-Orc Spear Guard, more Dunman units. Obviously the crossbows in the Greenway Guards. I'd go into the red limit as much as I could get away with the Greenway Guards, to be honest with you. And it looks as though Sharkan has, because I know that he's got 3 units of them. Half-Orc Bane Guard, lots of Dunman units, more Dunman pikemen as well, so that's pretty much it. So without further ado, let's begin. And in this sort of situation again, like I always put an advantage. Oh, there was actually a unit of Uruk-hai crossmen over there as well. I always give the advantage to the 5 against the 3, unless the map is so kind to the defenders. It's not really the case with Thranduil's halls, like just the fact they have to hold 3 choke points, one of which is really dangerous if you lose, because it gives the attackers a lot of room to move. So yeah, I mean, this I think certainly is a battle that the attackers should be winning. But the one thing that the defenders do have to hold on to here, I would say, is the fact that they can lean so heavily on those crossbowmen. Isengard, of course, well known for their crossbows, but Dunland as well, with those Greenway Guards and even the Greenway Sentries, the mounted crossbows gives them really a lot of options when it comes to their missiles. Just going back across the field over here. I do hope that this doesn't crash. I've really had enough of that. I really don't know what's happened to the game recently, but it has been poor. And again, I'm sure that my recording software has had something to do with that, but I mean, what am I supposed to do? Like, if I don't use my recording software, it would literally be a black screen with me talking about the battle, and that would be it. Not really the content people want to see. So here we are, this is the situation that we are in. Although this map has always been fine in the past. If there is something that's going to crash this, it'll be because I'm zoomed in and don't notice the witches come and they do too much damage for the game to handle all in one go, or the rangers will cause it to crash. Because of course their ability to tank my frames is well documented. So Master Blaster has decided to move forward, and to be fair, there's no artillery on the attacking side, which may have been a stipulation. One thing that Thranduil's halls, well actually there is the trebuchet, but one thing that Thranduil's halls can be super bad for the defenders for is that if the attackers bring a ballista and park it on the other side of the river, they can shoot right through the defences on this side and over on the other choke point as well, and it can be a real nightmare to deal with, and it's just one more thing that the attackers have at their disposal in this particular map. But on this occasion that is not going to be the case, and Master Blaster is going to be setting up a front line, but again, like, the quality of this front line is going to be in question. I mean, Dunman Pikemen and Half-Orc Spearguard together should be able to hold the line for a decent amount of time, provided they're backed up by skirmishers, but over a long period of time against the kind of quality that the attackers are going to be bringing to the field, especially later on in the battle, I would imagine, it's going to be pretty nasty. But Eclipse is going to be leading the way, unsurprisingly, with some of these lower end units like the Avendim Spears, those Teardrop Shields, those Shorts. Again, not exactly battle ready attire, but they always tend to do pretty well for what they cost. And they're going to be the first ones in, and they're going to be backed up by some Arthedain marksmen as well to try and maybe skirmish down with the defenders. Again, Dunland not really able to bring any high tier archers either, like Dunman Hunters is really the best that they're able to do. But I mean, at least the Dunman Hunters, they won't mind using their ammunition on anything really. It's only the crossbows they're really going to have to conserve their ammunition for. There's also these Dunman Scouts here, which is an interesting inclusion. Obviously very low tier cavalry, but off the charge they can still be pretty deadly. Pharaoh trying to get his, I can't believe I called him Pharaoh. I must be a fool. Forward come the Dunman Spears. It's good to see that the attackers are really getting into position quickly here, not messing around, maybe smelling blood in the water with all of these lower end units. As we can see here, the shield wall of the Half-Orc Spearguard. Are they going to charge downhill? I mean, they really need to be careful not to overextend themselves here. Like I said, I think 1 or 2 misplays and it might already put the battle out of the attacker's ability to win. A lot of heavy tree cover here, of course, in the Mirkwood. Arthadain marksmen getting into position, so certainly Arthadain are the ones that are taking point here. Mirkwood also have one of their units of spears nearby, but I mean, in this sort of situation I would imagine that the elves should really be the last wave in. If it were me, I would send Angmar and Gondor forward really aggressively right from the off, with Arthadain in a sort of supporting role, and then when enough damage has been done, send the elves in to clean up. Gwathlo trackers, so a little bit more damaging perhaps than the Dunman hunters, but you know, I've called them ghetto rangers in the past for a reason. They have all the weaknesses of rangers, but without the huge benefit of that body-piercing projectile that rangers are well known for. But considering the high ground advantage that they do have the ability to skirmish with the upgraded Arthadain marksmen, but still, the armoured forces of the Men of the West should be able to take a decent amount of punishment here. Forward comes some Gondor militia archers as well, so right from the off here, we're seeing the skirmish phase begin, the Evendim spearmen getting into shield wall to prevent any sort of counter-attack from the Dunland army over on this side from Sharkan, but again, the defenders would be absolutely crazy to try and counter-attack in here. It's not as if they can even utilise their relatively high numbers from having Dunland armies in this situation, because it's not as if they can spread out. I mean, it's this valley area here that they would have to move into. Lorinand archers getting into a good position here to shoot across the river, so they may not have a ballista at their disposal this time, the attackers, but they still have the ability to shoot over the river with their elven archers. And I would imagine they're trying to go for the Dunman pikemen here, and considering the fact that there is some interesting terrain going on here, several of their arrows are actually finding their mark. Good elven accuracy, of course, means they can really thread that needle. And the Dunman pikemen are going to be an important aspect of the defending armies here. There may be low-tier pikemen, but low-tier pikes can really punch above their weight with what they can achieve. That, however, was Greenway sentries using their bolts. I think maybe a little bit early to start thinking about using crossbow bolts, to be honest with you, but that is exactly what Dunland are already doing over on this side. Gwathlo trackers, meanwhile, continuing to shoot in. Ooh, hello. Bit of a counter-attack here from the Trolls of the White Hand. Maybe a little bit gung-ho of them, because several of them could get caught, and if any of them die at the hands of Evendim's spearmen, that will be a very real loss for Isengard, because it's one of the real powerful units that the defenders have at their disposal, and they can't afford to lose them to Arthadain's militia. No matter how many of them they kill, the Evendim spearmen are one of the most disposable units that the attackers have at their disposal. And the Trolls of the White Hand are anything but disposable for them. Meanwhile, Uruk-hai infantry move forward. I think in a rescue attempt here, I think Pharaoh realises the magnitude of the error that he could have made here, because the Trolls are starting to die now, which is a sign that their hit points are already disappearing. Not the best of ideas from Isengard. Like I was saying, like, a single error could be enough to put this out of the reach of the defenders. We shall see. I think this battle was always going to be decided on the strength of the defenders' crossbows if they were going to be the ones to win this. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world, I suppose, but it's still not a good thing at all. Yeah, the Uruk-hai infantry now getting away from there, so the Evendim spearmen can count themselves. You know, can be very proud of their efforts there. They may not have the most kills when the end of the battle comes, but some of those kills will be Trolls. Big targets. March once to the wood. I saw those poison arrows fly through the air trying to get at some of those Uruk-hai units. Gwathlo trackers up here on the cliffs. The addition of these fences weren't always here. You know how I feel about fences, but at least there's only a couple of them on this map. But the Gwathlo trackers now, it's very easy to bury your arrows into the fence, and even if you don't, you have to shoot over it, which kind of ruins this defensive position completely, to be honest with you. Meanwhile, the Evendim spearmen are now wavering. Ooh, Trollshore axe throwers. Again, a bit wasteful, I think. Like, these Evendim spearmen have been the cause of absorbing ammunition and killing a couple of trolls off, so Eclipse can be very pleased with his day's work so far. He hasn't really committed anything of any note so far, and already a good amount of efficiency being gained. A lot of these pikes here getting absolutely shredded by those elven arrows. I mean, they only have so much of this ammunition, the attackers, but so far their skirmishers have done a very good job, which isn't too surprising, to be honest with you. Of all the attacking armies, Angmar is really the only one with a poor skirmish line. Gondor, Arthadain, Mirkwood and Lothlorien all have good archer forces. Meanwhile, Dunman scouts ripping right through the Arthadain marksmen, but I mean, they're charging in here. They do manage to get a good hit onto these Arthadain marksmen. These Dunman scouts could cause a decent amount of chaos here, but they're very lightly armoured, they're very fragile. I can't imagine that their morale is going to hold up for too much longer. I don't believe they have the morale buffs that Rudauer have either, so I think they might actually be easier to break than the Rudauer variant. of the Dunman Scouts, and they're already a relatively low tier archer, but I mean, they've managed to get in here, they've managed to give the attackers something to think about, and considering the fact that the attackers have so far had this battle all their own way, I suppose the defenders will be relatively pleased with that, but the Dunman Scouts ultimately do break. Very unsurprising, obviously, nearby Elven Spearmen. Not a great thing for them. There's a lot of routing going on over here, though. Those units should come back, those Ebendom Spearmen. I think they just routed from this front line over here. A lot of those Ebendom Spearmen did die, of course, but again, these Trollshaw axe throwers, they've been exposed to all of these archers. Like, it's a terrible, terrible idea from Shah Khan to send his Trollshaw axe throwers forward. They're really, honestly, aside from the crossbows, the unique crossbows that Dunland have, the most damaging unit they have at their disposal is the Trollshaw axe throwers, and they've just been sent out here into the meat grinder. Like, there's more arrows in the air than raindrops at this point. And this is going to be the end of them. I mean, the Knights of Illuminus are going to absolutely flatten a unit of already depleted Trollshaw axe throwers. Lancers down. There's not going to be a single one left standing, I don't think. They will mow them down like grass, this heavy Arthedain cavalry. And no, to be fair, 2 of them still alive. Forward come the spears, but yeah, I mean, Shah Khan, maybe a little bit less of an experienced player, because you really don't want to be exposing yourself. You want to be using the terrain to defend yourself, and if they come up here with their infantry force, then you engage. Try and get your axe throwers to do the job then. But yeah, not a good start over on this side for the defenders. The Half-Orc Spearguard now, though, managing to get into the Knights of Illuminus, killing off a couple of them, but honestly, that's cold comfort next to the loss of those axe throwers. Those Lorinand archers from Froggy have already done a real number on this Dunland army as well. I mean, I suppose the upshot of this is that Dunland, considering they don't really have any high quality options in their army, they at least have the numbers to be able to absorb casualties like this, but the problem is, like, they need those numbers to be able to overwhelm the quality of the attacking infantry. Illuminus Gate Guards over here, as well as those Knights of Illuminus, so Arthedain really the only ones with some high quality units being committed forward. Again, hand-thrown projectile units like the Snaga Skirmishers may not be the best javelins, but they're going to be so important if the defenders are going to win here. And they're just not being used efficiently. I think they're trying to go after the Knights. I'd be more tempted to go after the Illuminus Gate Guards, to be honest. Dismounted Knights of Illuminus are here as well, so once again, Shah Khan has chased them too far, and now a combination of dismounted Knights of Illuminus and Illuminus Gate Guards, 2 of the finest infantry units that Arthedain have at their disposal, and they will absolutely destroy Half-Orc Spearguard, armour upgrade or no. Forward come those blue capes. The Illuminus Gate Guards once upon a time were really strong. Not so much anymore, but they're still a very useful unit for Arthedain, a unit of very decent pikes, I would call them. But the fact that they can buff morale also means that they can really sit at the centre of an Arthedain army and do a good job, much in the same way that the Wardens of Tir and Gorthad can do for Cardlan, but Arthedain don't need that morale buff quite so badly, so that's perhaps why you don't see them get the same sort of credit as the Cardlan variant of that unit. Half-Orc Spearguard are now retreating after really being given a good seeing to, still being shot by those Arthedain marksmen. Snaga Skirmishers in here still. A good target for some sort of archers to go after. Forward come those Dunedain Trollslayers as well, so Eclipse really taking point here, sending forward more and more of his army. Forward come Angmar now from Joxim, and when Angmar come forward you know that it's about to go down. Because they can really only do one thing, Angmar, but they do that one thing very well, and that's roll forward and destroy their enemy with brute force. Forward comes some Greenway sentries once again. I mean, to give the defenders credit, it does look as though they've conserved their crossbow ammunition, which, like I said, is going to be the most important thing for them. Wathlow trackers continuing to fire away, but all of these attacking armies, most of them anyway, with good skirmish presence on the field, making life difficult for the attackers. I mean, the defenders here. Forward comes some trolls. The whistle of crossbow bolts. I mean, to be honest with you, it's never really a great idea to try and go after trolls with ranged units unless they're javelins, because they move around so much and so many of those bolts will end up missing their target. In come the trolls of Angmar, and they're going to charge in all on their lonesome, but considering it's just Spearguard and very depleted Dunman pikemen in here, the trolls of Angmar can probably get away with being in here. Now, however, running forth from the trees, we do have the half-orc Bane Guard, and with those axes and big two-handed Morning Stars that they're wielding, a much better unit for going after the Trolls of Angmar. That armor piercing, the high base damage that unit of shock infantry has. These Trolls of Angmar may have just overextended themselves in much the same way that the Trolls of the White Hand did, although now they're charging into the Lurtz Hunting Pack. Those Lurtz Hunting Pack need to be saved really badly. They need to continue to go after these Trolls. I mean, this is always a bit disheartening when a unit just sort of rolls through your defence like that. But, to be fair, the defenders also needed to be a little bit more on the ball. This is just one unit of Trolls which is causing all this damage. Half-Orc Bane Guard coming forward, and now also there is a little bit of an infantry force trying to follow them in. Only a unit of Woodland Round Patrol, to be fair, but even basic Elven Archers out of ammunition are better than the equivalents from other races, so there is always that. This Bane Guard, it needs to get into these Trolls. I mean, these Trolls have overextended themselves at this point. It's not as if the Lurtz Hunting Pack are defenceless in melee. They're actually pretty damn good in melee, but any one of them that is lost will be a real tragedy. Yeah, now the Lurtz Hunting Pack are going down, but they've also done a decent amount of damage to those Gwathlos. On balance, I don't think that was really worth it from Angmar, but they did cause a little bit of panic. It would have been more worth it if the attackers had instantly charged in with a bigger force. They are doing so now with some heavy Lothlorien spears coming forward, as well as some civilians from Gondor and some Arthedain forces. And now the attack on the occupied Thranduil's halls is beginning in earnest, as over here Arthedain also coming forward. Dunedain Trollslayers getting into melee. Very powerful in melee, of course, with those two-handed axes. 2 hit points as well at their disposal. But, to be fair to the defenders over on this side, they do have some pikes in position, which will make life a little bit more difficult, but of course still taking damage from across the river, those Keren Amroth Rangers. And that's going to be really brutal for them, obviously. Body piercing, the Dunman Pikemen are terrible under archer fire as it is, let alone Lothlorien's Rangers. So they won't last too much longer either. It may not be a ballista on the other side of the river, but those elven arrows are proving to be almost just as big of a problem. Hiri Peng over on the other side, shooting into the side of this Dunman formation. In come the Knights of Enuminus as well, trying to get in and around this front line, and they will be able to. The Dunlanding veterans are going to be able to kill off the Gondor Militia archers in melee. I mean, the Knights do need to be a little bit careful here. In come the Blackwolds, the other unit from Dunland. Probably the best unit for Dunland in melee, to be honest with you, in terms of damage, and they do manage to hit those Knights of Enuminus, and this could be the end, honestly. Eclipse trying to push, yeah it is, I mean they're routing. He tried to push through, which is probably the right thing to do to cause even more havoc. Like, the momentum is with them, so why not try and really hammer that home by getting Knights in behind their lines, but in the end, the defenders do manage to stop that from happening at the very least. How's their front line getting on though? Under scrutiny from Elven infantry. Well, for now it's holding up. I think maybe it's a case of numbers here. Like, the Lorenan Spearmen are the only unit of any quality that's on the front line here, and they haven't really fully committed forward here, the attackers, which is allowing the defenders a bit more respite than they maybe would otherwise have. Still, these Gwathlo trackers firing away into the killing fields, but Snaga Stalkers coming forward from the Witch Realm of Angmar. Forward come the Witch Realm Pikemen. Still, these Snaga skirmishers are in this gap. I mean, this central choke point is the most difficult one to go through, because as soon as you go through there, you're going to get pincered on both sides, especially seeing as that's the choke point the Isengard are defending, the scariest of all the defending armies by far. So it's perhaps not too surprising they're not attacking through there yet, but maybe Angmar will now, with the assistance of those Lothlorien Javelins, leading the way with their Witch Realm units, that rusted armour. Ooh, those Snaga skirmishers are going to charge forward, and they're going to immediately get destroyed here by the Angmar heavy infantry. Not great for them. Elder Council also in here. Witch Realm Pikemen plodding forwards. Some Gondorians now adding themselves to the front line. Still, those Dunedain Trollslayers are on the front line, and they don't look to have taken all that much damage. I mean, some, but not a ton. But now, this is actually the best position for the defenders to be in. You can see that they are. Now they've got that sort of horseshoe shape, which is going to be acting in their favour, but still those Keren Amroth Rangers are on the other side, the Watchers of the Goldenwood as well, so I mean, it doesn't get any easier for Pharaoh. Or Sharkan, I should say. That was Trebuchet fire from the Gondorians across the way, trying to do some damage over here. And to be fair, over here on Master Blaster's side, things are going a little bit better, perhaps because he's not quite so exposed to Elven arrow fire. Elven Rangers and Silverthorn arrows that Sharkan is having to deal with on the other side. Not great for him. But also, I think the attackers haven't really committed forward too many really high tier units. Some Loren-armed archers coming forward now. They're good, but they're not quite on the same level as the Swordmasters. Which, the Swordmasters would be a real problem for units like the Dunland Veterans, the Bane Guard and the Spear Guard. I mean, even these Loren-armed archers, to be fair, not going to be a great situation for them to be in. Trollshaw Axe Throwers getting targeted down by the Treb, which is not a bad idea. Again, like I said, the Trollshaw Axe Throwers are among the most damaging units that Dunland have at their disposal. It's actually one of Sharkan's units, which is over here. Not really sure what these Uruk-hai crossmen are firing at. They can't have a good shot on anything. So again, I feel as though for Pharaoh this is more wasted ammunition. They can't afford to waste their crossbow bolts. That is how they win or lose this fight. Ooh, hello. Greenway Guards actually getting some decent hits here into the back of this attacking force. And there's some good targets to go after here, which are on Pikemen, Guardians of Khan Doom. Some Loren-armed archers making their way through, but you can see here, real killing field already. Isengard and Angmar kind of have, of the Orc factions, they're certainly the more quality focused of the four that are in the game at the moment. Isengard perhaps a little bit more so. Isengard perhaps a little bit more balanced, whereas Angmar probably have the scarier higher tier units. But in this situation, Uruk-hai Pikes and Uruk-hai Infantry together, they're in a better set defensive position as well. Even with those arrows trying to shoot over, not a lot of them are really hitting their mark. Certainly here, I think the defenders are in a pretty decent position if they can keep this up. Snaga Skirmishers also continuing to throw those jabbies. The Uruk-hai crossbows have got a better shot onto the attackers than the attacking archers have, vice versa. Oh boy, I mean there really is no rest for the weary over here. Froggy is just teeing off into Sharkan's defensive position to such an extent that I'm not really sure I want to zoom in, lest it crash. Split shot coming in, Silver Thorns. I mean, it's Dunlanding Berserkers. Like, a lot of these Dunland units are just so vulnerable to arrow fire like this, and Lothlorien are the most devastating in the business. You can just see the blood spray coming up from the Silver Thorns and the split shots. Trebuchet hitting nothing but the cliffside that time, so again, a little bit of respite for the defenders. Coming forward now with the Trolls of Gundabad. Over here, to be fair, Dunland are actually holding up for the time being. The support of those crossbows, the pikes managing to hold down the front line with the support of all of the units in and around them. Another unit of Dunlanding veterans being committed forward. Like again, the Dunlanding veterans are the kind of unit which will really struggle against Elven infantry, but just in terms of sheer numbers for the time being, they are managing to hold on. And it is only the Loren-armed archers so far. As soon as something like the Loren-armed axeman or swordmasters come forward, then we'll see what these Dunlanders are really made of. Some of those out of ammunition Gondorian archers as well. Arthedain pikemen over here actually shaken, getting hit by missiles, I'm sure. Dunline Trollslayers also being hit by missiles, but also responding in kind with javelins of their own, and as soon as they get into melee, those axes will be pretty deadly as well. Gondol Militia archers, of course, not the most sturdy unit on the front line, and they are routing. So more reinforcements are needed, to be honest with you, over here for the attackers. They should still be fine, I think, as long as they manage to keep this attack alive, but defenders managing to seize the initiative on this side at the very least. Uruk-hai crossmen, what are they shooting at? Going after the Blackwatch Legion, not a bad target honestly, because the Blackwatch Legion, if they're deployed at the right time, that a push from them could be lethal and match winning. So not the worst target a unit of Uruk-hai crossbows could go after. Meanwhile, Isengard forcing Angmar back. It's not often you see Angmar forced back, but Isengard managing to do so here with the support of those crossbows and javelins and the sturdiness of their Uruk-hai front line. So fair play to Pharaoh. Meanwhile, let's go and see how the bullying of Sharkan is getting on. Because, I mean, you can see here that based on that Elven missile spot, I mean, now they're actually getting out of range and out of position of the Elven arrows. So now they're just going to have to make do with just in being strong in melee, but to be fair, like, they've already got the initiative over on this side, the attackers, and if the attackers are wise, they'll continue to commit forward units over here to smash this defence apart, and then they won't need to worry about the other two because they'll be able to deal with them. I think maybe the time has come for Pharaoh to commit forward to Murakkai, and they need to hold on to this. The Black Walls are here, and the Black Walls were really good against the Gondorian and Arthedain attackers, but there are also Lothlorien attackers in there, Lothlorien Swordmasters. Not good for them. Exactly the sort of unit the Black Walls don't want to be engaged with. Yeah, they're going to need more support over here. Interestingly enough, probably a bit of friendly fire coming from the split shots at this point, so perhaps not all is lost. Defeat actually seems like a distinct possibility because of that friendly fire. Who knows? Maybe the attackers could be their own worst enemy. Greenway Guards continuing to fire. Of course, they will actually be pretty useful as infantry units as well. I believe they're multiple HP. So they will be useful when all is said and done in melee. They may be spears, but just having a really sturdy unit on the front line, regardless of what they are, will be handy. Continuing to shoot into the back of those attackers over here. I hope they're not shooting into the backs of Snaga. That's not really worthwhile at all. But Isengard definitely doing a good job at holding on here in the middle. Goblin trackers moving forward. Gondor infantry also threatening to move in as well. Was that the sound of a ballista bolt? It was. The Isengard ballista trying to get up onto this hill. What are they actually going to try and fire at, though? Would be my question. Definitely a very bloody fight so far. Troll Shiraxor is moving backwards, and to be fair, I think the defenders have actually managed better than I thought they were going to initially here. My main concern would be over here, though. I mean, it's good to see actually that Isengard do recognise the danger that this represents, and the Uruk-hai infantry are moving forward. I think Froggy, he did a lot of damage initially, but now he's probably hindering his army more than anything by shooting those split shots over here, because they will get friendly fire with how they split off. Gwathlo trackers moving into position out of ammunition from Master Blaster, but something is better than nothing at this point over here, just to try and stem the tide. And now, suddenly, the skirmish advantage is in favour of the defenders. Those Dunman Hunters getting a perfect shot. They may not be the best archers, but they're getting a very clean shot into the attackers here. Now we'll see how the Gondorian and Arthedain armour, I should say, holds up to that sort of pressure. The Troll Shiraxors, though, will be really good in this situation as well. Like, mostly heavily armoured and shielded infantry, but they need to do damage here. They need to try and break up this assault. But again, this is the sort of situation where Gondor especially will be more at home. Like, they should be able to weather that storm and still be able to press home a bit of an advantage. Over here, meanwhile, Cairn Amroth Rangers, who of course did such grievous damage to Dunland before, moving forward with some Healy out, continuing to send forward. Like, I'm actually surprised. Like, I feel like this Dunland front line would have been smashed to bits earlier if they had sent forward a more comprehensive force right from the off. But as it is, they've been going more wave-based with this. Hasn't really paid off as of yet. These Woodland Realm Patrol trying to squeeze in behind the line here. They will be able to do so, but a lot of them getting caught up on the Uruk-hai pikes. I can't imagine this is going to be allowed to stand. Out of ammunition crossbows are going to prevent them from moving further, and considering they're already quite stretched, the Woodland Realm Patrol, I can't imagine that this is going to come to anything from Inarius. I can see there the Vulges of the Greenway Guards out, so that means that they're out of ammunition with their crossbows, which is not great for the defenders, but at least they will be able to fulfill their role as infantry. Half-Orc Spear Guards starting to rout from the front line, so a lot of the Dunlanders may be starting to lose their stomach for the fight. Bad sign for the defenders, because they committed so much to these defences. I kind of feel as though they need to stay here and just try and hold on for dear life. Gundabad Guard on the front line. But the spears will not be able to defeat the Uruk-hai infantry, especially not backed up by those pikemen. Especially not when the Gundabad Guard, the only support they have, are out of ammunition Snaga archers, one of the worst units in melee in the game, and unsurprisingly they immediately rout under pressure from the professional Uruk-hai troops. Elder Councillor there. Gondor infantry routing from the front line, a lot of routing actually, and the Trolls were committed again, so they may not have been used brilliantly early on here, the Trolls, but they have managed to stop this assault dead in its tracks. There goes another Troll, but very well done to the defenders. They managed to stop the rot there, which very, very important here. Because again, one of these defences falls, and the attackers will be able to wrap up the lines. Dunman Hunters continuing to fire. There's still some units of Gondorians fighting on the front line, some Gondor spearmen here, but they're up against Uruk-hai infantry and Gwathlo trackers. Like, some Wards of the North in there as well, actually. Certainly strong. Maybe the defenders can do this. Maybe their numbers-focused approach with their Dunland armies can yield results. Greenway Guards are going to be shooting right into that blob, though. It's not a good sign here for the attackers. It's always a bad sign for the attackers when one of your attacks completely stalls out and you need to completely start from scratch. Dunlanding Berserkers moving, Greenway Guards moving. So suddenly over here is looking like the more fertile hunting ground. Bandits moving in from Dunland, backed up by the Greenway Guards, but they're going up against Lorenan Swordmasters. Still, those Dunland crossbow bolts finding their mark. Orc fellas moving into the front line, fighting side by side with those elves. There's a lot of Uruk-hai on the front line now, including pikes. So, again, there's so many pikes here on the front line that I think the attackers are really having trouble trying to sort of mulch their way through. Of course, the upshot to this is across the river there, Greenwood Rangers. Well, that was a ballista bolt, I believe. It is, and the ballista shooting into the backs of this attacking force over here. So yeah, the defenders have really managed to sort of reorganise their armies into a very good position here. It's going to come down to those Greenwood Rangers on the other side trying to wear down Master Blaster's front, but another big wave of assault coming in. The Warns of the North pulled back, seeing that they were being overwhelmed, but now, I mean, a lot of these units, like Gondor Infantry, fully upgraded. Fountain Guard are going to be a real problem, but honestly, the Fountain Guard would be a good target for the Troll Shiraxras to go after. Like, they're not AP, but the lack of a shield makes the juicy target for the Troll Shiraxras, and indeed I think that is what they are going for. But again, quality is going to be the main problem here for the defenders. If they do go on to lose this battle, it will be because of that. Uruk-hai Infantry continuing to try and push in. Gondor Infantry, victory seems certain. Dunman Hunters out of ammunition, should just be committed to the melee to try and stop yet another big advance over on this side. As the rain continues to fall, can the defenders do it again? It was very impressive how they managed to force the attackers back that last time, but do they have the ability to do that once more? Lorenan Axemen, the Uruk-hai continuing to push back, the support of their ballista from the hill. Very, very useful. Ooh, and now they're trying to go right across over here. Ooh, very close. That could have hit Ents. But now the Ents are going to be able to get in behind, and with Ents over on that side, I worry for the defenders. There goes the Arthedain General. Just as the Ents arrived, unfortunately for him. Still, the defenders holding on very nicely over on this side. A lot of Uruk-hai pikes, Greenway Guards also over here. Advantageous defensive position as well. There's the Trebuchet crew. Athelian Rangers and Greenwood Rangers. So I mean, the attackers have had Rangers for days, and yet they still haven't been able to completely destroy those pipelines. Maybe just out of range over on that side, to be fair. Where'd the Ents go? There they are. Getting right in amongst things. The Troll Shiraxras must be out of ammunition because they've been committed to melee now, but they're not very good in melee. Neither are the Gwathlo trackers. Like the Uruk-hai pikemen and infantry are okay, but not to this extent. Not to the extent where they can stop the elite Gondorian infantry and the Ents from attacking in. Troll Shiraxras back here trying to use their ammunition. Another unit of pikes coming forward. When you're dealing with something like the Ents, very akin to the Trolls, I'm not really sure pikes are the answer, but I mean, needs must. It's the only infantry unit they've got nearby, and they need something to help reverse the tide of what's happening over here. Forward come the Ents. The Greenway sentries moving in. Troll Shiraxra is coming back, trying to use their ammunition. As the Dunlanders charge in, pulling out their spiky maces. Still those Ents on the front line. I mean, Troll Shiraxras are going to be doing their best, but a single unit of them, I think, is not going to be capable of the kinds of damage that the defenders need to make something happen here. That might be, though, Greenway Guards with a perfect shot here into the core of this army. And some of the more depleted Gondorian units are already routing off. Maybe it's not impossible. These Warns of the North are continuing to move forward. Bit depleted at this point, but I think these Greenway sentries are bitten off a little bit more than they can chew. They're sandwiched between Elven infantry up the hill, Warns of the North down the hills, also an Ent in and amongst them, which is never a good sign when you're a unit of cavalry. Near enough now at the final 10,000 frames, and it's very even, just a single percentage point in it. But that's a good sign for the attackers. The attackers tend to be able to motor away with these things in the late game. Dunlanding Berserkers being committed to the front line, trying to continue to hold on. This is where the quality of the Elven armies, I think, should probably start to pay dividends. The Witchrealm Hammerguard are in here as well. Those big rusted warhammers are going to be able to smash right through that Uruk-hai armour. Lorenan Axemen continuing. What's happening over here? I mean, this is where the defenders were having some joy still, and they continue to do so. Like, even with the Watchers of the Goldenwood here, the defensive position, the support of all those ranged units still is allowing the defenders to continue to look like they're going to win over here. Uruk-hai Berserkers as well, but my question is, have they overcommitted over here? They've got Uruk-hai Berserkers, Blackwolds, several units of Greenway Guards when their other two front lines are struggling horrendously. And my question would be, do they really need all this stuff over here? Elder Council, Javelin Men throwing in, Greenway Guards getting into position to maybe try and shoot into the back of that force over there, but it's you can only see Snaga and Goblins. So again, maybe not the most useful of targets. Greenway Guards. Those Ents are almost completely dead, but at what cost? They may have already done the damage. Although Fountain Guard, defeat seems certain. Another unit of Blackwolds coming in, as well as the Naz Kai, so Isengard's committing forward their most elite unit of infantry, but it's a lot of Gondorian elites that they're going to have to try and stop here, and the attackers, if they continue to pour forwards like this, it's going to be a problem. And it's also these monsters, the Elven King's Palace Guard. They're going to need to try and shoot them from afar. Wardens of the White Tower, yeah, there's a lot of elite units over here. So, I mean, if the defenders can stop this, if they can kill these units, they may be in a good position to go on to win the battle. Wardens of Amon Lank getting into position up on the hills. Those elven bows, even if they do run out of ammunition, they'll pull out those axes and be almost as much of a problem in melee as they can be at range. Another unit of Greenway Guards running around back there. Ones of the North have pursued the enemy a long way, but at this point there's so many gaps in this defensive line. The attackers have managed to swamp in. Elder Council getting shot by something. Trollshaxlers, I think it was. But a unit that's so depleted may not have been the wisest choice to kill. Dunlanding Berserkers still holding on to the front line with their bilateral axes. But Dunland Berserkers, as far as shock infantry goes, they're seeing what a real shock infantry is capable of here in the Witchram Hammer Guard. They'd be able to kill off Snaga, of course, but, well, there goes one of the Dunland generals. Well. Yeah, the defenders need to win this fight fairly substantially over here, which, to be fair, it looks like they are doing so. Watchers of the Goldenwood are pretty much all on their lonesome on this front line at this point, getting utterly overwhelmed. Continuing to do the business there. Ballista ran out of ammunition some time ago. There's still Blackwolds in reserve. Greenway Guards continuing to fire, but what at? Kindred of Celeborn are in melee over here as well, so Lothlorien sent forward their most elite units, maybe just to try and draw their attention for a while, because the real problem is over here. The Blackwolds doing their best. Victory still seems certain for them, which I find hard to believe, especially now that more and more elven units are starting to engage them in melee. The mighty Wardens of Amon Lank. The AP won't be useful against the Blackwolds, but you can't imagine their hit points are going to last for too much longer. Vanguard of King Elisar have managed to worm their way in behind the lines as well. That's never a good sign when a Swordmaster unit of such quality is running around unhindered. These Uruk-hai pikemen, they're getting shot. They're surrounded by Elven King's Palace Guard. So these poor Uruk-hai are certainly on the downswing, I would say. There are the Nimlothian Honor Guard. Blackwolds now finally looking like they're thinking, maybe victory doesn't seem certain. We're being surrounded by Nimlothian Honor Guard and Wardens of Amon Lank and getting shot. Maybe things ain't so peachy after all. The Vanguard of King Elisar moving forward. And of course, when you engage Snaga skirmishers in melee with anything, there's only going to be one winner. Especially when the Wardens of the North were already here as well. Don't know if the defenders can come back from this, honestly. It was a crippling blow. It was very impressive how they managed to turn them back once, but a second time I think was asking a little bit too much. The Orc fellas managing to push their way through the lines. It's actually impressive how the Dunlanding Berserkers stayed on the front line and fought to the bitter end. But now, Watchers of the Goldenwood routing off. It takes quite a lot to rout those boys off. But now the only unit that's over here are the Kindred of Celeborn. Too many men were too static over here for too long, I think, for the defenders. Isengard General getting run through by an Elven Axe. But yeah, they had... I can see why, because obviously you want reserves over here just in case they do start to turn the tide, the Elves, but there was such a problem happening on the other side. They, like a unit of Black Walls, a couple of units of Greenway Guards, they overcommitted over on this side, I think, the defenders. And that could end up costing them here, because the attackers have been utterly victorious now in the middle, and it's not going to take too much before they completely wipe away the defenders that were over here as well. Very scattered Black Wolds are pretty much all that remains. Elven King's Palace Guard haven't really lost anything yet, nor have the Vanguard of King Elisar. There's also some Hiri Peng, out of ammunition archers, some Orc fellas wanting to be a part of the action as well. Good victory for the attackers here, and when it was clear that the weakness was starting to show itself, they moved in and exploited it ruthlessly. Again, Sharkan really had a lot to deal with over on this side. Initially, those archers from Froggy ripping through his defensive line. They managed to turn them back, and partly I think that was because of some of the friendly fire that Froggy was getting with those split shot arrows, to be honest with you. But the defenders did manage to throw them back once, but then they just came forward with an even stronger force, and this time smashed them to smithereens. Oh, there goes Haldia. Killed off by the Berserkers. Very lore-friendly, may not be in the right place, but still. Defeat seems certain for them. A combination of those Berserkers and the Uruk-hai pikemen will slowly but surely finish the Kindred of Caliborn off. It wasn't a glamorous job that Froggy had over on this side with his archers, but he had to go in here just to distract the defenders, and it seemed like that worked. So good for them. There's still archers here on the lower ground, and it is... what is it? Ah, Hiri Peng. No rest for the weary. Some Snaga archers down here as well. Whatever happened to the Athelian Rangers and the Greenwood Rangers? I think the Athelian Rangers were up here on this cliff for a little while at the very least. So now, the attackers just need to regroup, head over to this hill over here. And the problem is, when there's stuff like Athelian Rangers and Greenwood Rangers that still have ammunition, it's a bad sign. Goblin Trackers and Snaga Archers may be getting, or Snaga Stalkers I should say, so not quite as bad as Snaga Archers in melee, but still not ideal. Getting a little bit too far ahead of themselves and engaging Uruk-hai pikemen on their own, which will be enough to send them packing at the very least. But you know, they weren't entirely alone I suppose. There are still a few Hammer Guard, but only 6 of them. The Hammer Guard certainly doing their job in the middle there, doing the business, but overextending themselves just a bit. The Goblin Trackers running for their lives. What's that over there? Hiri Alth pulling back from the front line. The Trebuchet crew coming back for another bite of the cherry, but these pikemen need to get out of here at this point because they're getting shot by the Hiri Peng on the lower ground. Dunlending veterans running away. No great hurry to reinforce those goblins. Elder Councillor here. Yeah, and again, Athelian Rangers. To be fair, they are skirmishing with a unit of heavily armoured multiple HP crossbows, so the Athelian Rangers are actually losing this skirmish fight, although they're not actually shooting the Greenway Guards, they're shooting with pikes, which is the right move, I think. Oof. Pretty brutal for the Athelian Rangers, though. In come the Elder Council, really trying to sort of deal with this pocket of Isengard resistance before moving forward. Again, the quality I think is just going to be too much. I mean, they can't have enough crossbow bolts at this point to deal with Palace Guard, Wards of the White Tower, Vanguard of King Elisar. Aren't the Witches still somewhere around here as well? Gondol Militia Archers. I mean, it's entirely possible the Witches died earlier on in the fight, to be honest. And we never noticed. The crossbows saw them and immediately destroyed them. Would have been certainly a wise course of action. All those arrows hitting almost all at once. The Uruk-hai pikemen have weathered this storm pretty well, though, all things considered. I mean, they've obviously taken some fairly grievous losses at the hands of the Rangers, as anything would, but that armour saving them from getting massacred in the same way that maybe the Dunman pikemen would have. Bit of a fighting retreat going on here. The Greenway Guards and the bandits trying to stop the advance of the Mirkwood infantry. as the Heary Alth are taking point, and the defenders can almost certainly feel the noose tightening as they retreat to their hill, but that's not going to be enough to save them, I don't think. Heary Peng. Amrod. Those elven arrows. Trebuchet crew still alive. Impressive in its own way. Forward comes some Uruk-hai berserkers. Spreading out wide now, Mirkwood with their Heary Peng. They seem to have the most men left here at this late stage, which is not too surprising. Definitely would have been recommended to have at least one of the elven armies have a significant amount of men left toward the late game. But the problem is just going to be one in melee. Like, the Elven King's Palace Guard are going to be able to tear their way through anything that the defenders have left. Although, to be fair, somewhat surrounded by Black Bolts and Greenway Guards. I mean, it's not the easiest position to be in. Especially seeing as they've already been in melee for quite some time. So, actually, their hit points are probably gone at this point. Maybe being asked to do a little bit too much without support here, the Elven King's Palace Guard. As strong as they are, like, the Wardens of the White Tower should probably hot-foot it over there to give them a bit of a hand. Greenwood Rangers shooting into some of the exposed units that are over there. Still, I mean, these pikes, they've been doing the business. Greenway Guards still have a bit of ammunition. Dead even in terms of percentages, so the attackers can't afford to get too cocky here. If they move in unthinkingly, they could find themselves overextending. One Greenway Guard holding up all of these reinforcements. Orkfeller's routing. Heary Peng still over here as well. Probably going to be over here like the Heary Alth. Heary Alth, of course, like the Greenway Guards, even if they are multiple HP, their spears, relatively low numbers in their unit as well. So against something like the Heary Alth, they're still going to struggle. We're right at the sharp end of this fight now, though, and still there's not a definitive winner, to be honest with you. I mean, I would still give the advantage to the attackers, but yeah, now I think, yeah, here we can see that now the Elven King's Palace Guard getting the support they maybe should have had right from the off from Gondor and Lothian Honor Guard, moving in, Wardens of the White Tower. So that should be the end of this unit of Greenway Guard, but it's been a very valiant defence here, I think. You're always somewhat handicapping yourself when you play as Dunland, because they're not a faction that's intended to be balanced, they're just intended to be a bunch of trash that you can kill in campaign. And really the Greenway Guards are the only reason you'd want to play as them, and the mounted variant, the Sentries. But they were made to be pretty good here. And I think a lot of that is down to the fact that they can use like a lot of crossbows, especially in conjunction with Isengard. Like, I feel as though the crossbow bolts were the main source of kills. But even then, like, the defenders do deserve a lot of credit for some good play as well. Because they were able to throw back the attacks multiple times, and in the end, that attack over on the other choke point was just a little bit back-breaking for their defence, and in the end, there was no coming back from that. The Kindred of Celeborn still alive, which, considering the fact they were thrown into a situation where I'm sure Froggy didn't expect them to still be alive, is impressive in its own right. Those dual swords, that really high melee defence coming in handy for them, I'm sure. Greenway Guards trying to shoot from on high, but they're going to be chased down by the Kindred, already being engaged by the Athelian Rangers. What's going on over here? These Greenway Guards, so yeah, they must be multiple HP with how tough they are. I've never played as Dunland, I've never actually seen their army selection screen myself. But I believe they are, and that would go some way to explaining why they're so tanky. But that alone will not be enough to save them here against the quality that they're going up against. But a very, very close battle, honestly. One that I didn't expect would be this close. Like, when you see Dunland, because of their lack of quality, like, they have to go so numbers heavy, and considering the attacking armies had such a good mix of various strengths, Angmar, of course, alongside Gondor and Arthedain, and then the Elven factions as well, you always felt like the versatility of the attacking armies would be their strength. And it has proven to be that way, but not to the extent that I thought it was going to be. I think Dunland and Isengard can certainly hold their heads up high after a really very good performance. Sharkan trying to run with his Greenway Guards, I mean, there's no escape at this point. You may as well fight and die in melee. Glorious melee combat. Master Blasters, Greenway Guards continuing to try and hold on. Wardens of Amon Lank with their AP. Greenwood Rangers defeat is a distinct possibility. Surely not. What is going on? Yet more Greenway Guards, although they're going up against Vanguard of King Elisar. Gondol Militia Archers moving forward. Defeat seems certain. And I feel as though... Is the battle just going to end? Is this going to be a crash situation? Another unit of 111 here, Pen going forwards. I mean, even if it is, I feel as though it's not too much of a problem, because it's obvious that the attackers are going to win. There goes the general. Maybe the rules that if you lose all your generals, you have to admit defeat as well, because I can't imagine these Greenway Guards are all going to die within the next 200 frames. They're too tanky for that. And Shah Khan has also managed to squirrel some of his away into the backfield, fighting in and around this fountain over here. Yeah, still fighting on, and it's going to be a replay finish, so this must have been someone crashing, which is unfortunate, but it means, of course, we won't be able to see the kill counts. But I feel as though it's not too much of a problem, because, of course, I haven't actually seen this section of the map before, really. For as many times as I've done Thranduil's Halls, this area has never really been utilised, this little corner. But yeah, I mean, the attackers were obviously going to win, like the Greenway Guards. Like, some of them were trying to run to maybe get space to shoot, but they were never going to be allowed to do that. They still had to deal with such quality in melee. So it says, yeah, defeat was a distinct possibility as well. Still too strong, but I mean, if we have a look at the percentage of kills, yeah, I mean, they did start to pull away a little bit more in the late game, the attackers, but still well within 10%. And very impressive, I think, from both Isengard and Dunland to be able to do that. Like, it looked for all the world like they were just going to slowly be pushed back all in one big go. But they managed to push the attackers back several times, and they had to deal with elven arrow fire coming from across the river, all sorts of stuff. Just the fact that Dunland just isn't a well-rounded faction because it's not supposed to be. They did well, I think, the defenders, I should say. They did well. But credit to the attackers as well. They handled this in exactly the way they needed to. In spite of the setbacks where they got pushed back a couple of times, they continued to go at it, and eventually they were able to win, of course, using those elven arrows from across the river, even though it wasn't devastating in the same way that a ballista may have been. Something like those elven split shot arrows, honestly, it may very well have been more devastating, because obviously you've got lots more ammunition on Silverthorns and split shot archers than you do on an artillery piece, but still very, very devastating. So Lothlorien deserve credit for that. Obviously the initial waves of Arthedain deserve credit as well for being the first ones in. It's never an easy job, and Eclipse did it well. And then, of course, in the late game, the quality that Mirkwood and Gondor still had at their disposal was always going to be too much. But the Witchers never got a volley off, at least not to my knowledge, so that should make people happy that they were immediately destroyed by crossbows, presumably at some point. But yeah, obviously we can't go through the kills or anything, because it was a battle that finished in a crash. But yeah, big thank you to Eclipse for sending this one to me. Obviously this was one that you sent to me quite some time ago, and obviously I'm trying to sort of spread out when I repeat maps. I don't want to repeat maps over and over again lest my content gets stale. But yeah, it's always good to see Thranduil's Halls. Old reliable at this point. It never lets me down, never crashes on me like some of the newer maps do. So yeah, big thank you to Eclipse for sending this battle replay to me. Big thanks to all the players for playing in a battle of such high quality on a map which everyone knows and loves. So yeah, I'm not sure what will be next. I think next I will be doing a battle on the Black Gate map, between a themed battle, I think it is as well, between Gondor and Mordor. So that should be fairly good. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next.